The first day of Senior Bowl practices are in the books, and I got a bunch of observations I want to give you pertaining to prospects for the Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it. You're on the Locked On Network. A special thank you to each and every one of you who have helped to make the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network in the world. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code Locked On for $20 off of your first purchase. I have this neat trick right now where every time I do a show, I have a different background because I'm now at the hotel in Mobile, Alabama. I'm 5 minutes down the road from South Alabama's campus, which of course is where Hancock Whitney's football stadium is. And that's where the Senior Bowl practices are taking place for the 2026 Reese Senior Bowl. We are here, boots on the ground, taking notes. When I tell you I was dialed on the trenches because Jon-Eric Sullivan told us that he was going to build this roster from the inside out. I was watching trenches yesterday. I'm excited to get into some of the observations that I had because Dolphins have a massive need at pass rush, right? Massive. Is Bradley Chubb going to be on the roster? Will Chop Robinson make a leap in year 3? Hard to say, right? It was not super inspiring in year 2. Needs to be better. Beyond that, what do you have in the pass rush room on the outside? Like a potential cap casualty and a first-round pick 2 years ago who regressed in year 2. It's not a great sales pitch to start your 26 pass rush unit. The good news is there are a whole bunch of dudes who stood out in that regard during the Tuesday practices, the first day of padded practices for both teams. On the offensive side of the ball, there's a right guard who has captured my heart. Emphatically my first draft crush of the season. We're going to talk about him and some other offensive line observations for the Dolphins. You know, it's Jon-Eric Sullivan talked about the depth and the need to acquire depth up front because it's a marathon of a season. You're going to have guys that get banged up, and you need to feel good about your 1 through 8 to get through the course of a season. And the Dolphins, especially this unit, the last, seemingly like 5 years, it's been a kiss of death that you could like the 1 through 8, but you're going to lose 3 in the first month of the season in perpetuity, right? That's what it feels like. So that 1 through 8 becomes a 1 through 5. And then somebody gets banged up, and then you really start to feel it. And that's happened with the Dolphins repeatedly. So more depth, even if you feel like, hey, if they keep Austin Jackson, say they bring back Larry Borum and they got Patrick Paul, like I would want a fourth guy I could feel like could play tackle because stats tell you, the odds say it's probably going to get there at some point in the year, right? And I can invoke all 3 of those names because Bobby Slowick's the offensive coordinator. He was here in the room last year. There's going to be some continuity within the scheme. So have some offensive tackle observations, but a right guard in particular is kind of like the black hole spot, right, that we need to figure out. I get a guy there. And I do have some skill player quarterback observations in particular with some of the size profiles of these guys with the weigh-ins and stuff that came in on Tuesday morning. So we got a lot to dive into. Let's start with the pass rush group because there's like 5 of them that had really good days. I would start with TJ Parker, 6'5", 263 pounds, long. I think that's the other thing, especially with the way that he went about his business in practice. The length was very apparent for him to kind of watch him create separation with his hands. He did not have a super productive last year at Clemson, but then again, like nobody really did at Clemson this past year. He came in with 33 and a quarter inch arms to go with 6'3.5", 263 pounds. TJ Parker was projected as a top 20 guy throughout the summer, had the down season. He's kind of fallen off in the mock drafts, but if he stacks days like this and kind of showcases like, hey, whether he was playing through something in 2025, getting back to 100% health, if he tests well, I think he can be back up in that conversation that maybe not at 11, but, maybe you get a perfect scenario where there's a trade down opportunity. Maybe you fall head over heels in love with him. And like, I don't know where I'm at with David Bailey right now as a pass rusher because he's a little bit of a leaner guy. I certainly think it's Arvell Reese and Reuben Bain at the top of the charts. And if either one of those guys were to find themselves staring you in the face at 11, like, yeah, I think that conversation deserves to be had. But beyond those two, like, I don't know where I'm at with any of these guys yet. And I know Parker was a guy that was once upon a time regarded as a top 20 guy. And you can consider me intrigued with how well he performed, in my opinion, through the first day of practice yesterday. He was not the only standout. Gabe Jacas, the J is silent. It's spelled Jacas. Gabe Jacas from Illinois, 6'3" and 1/8", 260 pounds, 32 3/4 inch on the arm. Dude was a nightmare. Yes, he was everywhere, whether that was one-on-ones and the pass rush one-on-ones, whether that was team periods and pursuit and showing up in the backfield and like, you're not supposed to touch the quarterbacks. We still managed to have a strip sack in the team period. He was everywhere. And he's been a guy who has been projected as like a bottom quarter of the top 100 type of player. And that's the sweet spot for the Dolphins, where they've got 75, 87, and 90. They've got 3 picks in that stretch that if Jacas ends up being not a riser, but if he kind of affirms and then you watch the tape and maybe he doesn't test super well, I see a guy that would make a ton of sense from a pass rush perspective to target with one of those third-round picks. Now, if he rises and ends up being like a fringe top 50 player and the Dolphins pick them at 50, like, I think all those things are on the table because we need to get all that information from the combine. How well does he run and what kind of explosive scores does he have and what are the interviews like? Like, there's a lot of ball game left in that regard. But it's an exciting development for me for a guy that was like fringe top 75 to come out and have a performance the way that he did. So that was another standout for me, was Gabe Jacas from Illinois. But it doesn't stop there. Tyreak Sapp from Florida, built like 19-year-old Mike Tyson with like the super thick neck, the crazy dense legs. Like, he's a rocked up dude, Tyreak Sapp. Power player at defensive end. I think about the archetype that, looking at his body type, it reminds me of. It kind of reminds me of like the John Franklin Myers defensive end. Like, he was with the Jets and then he got traded to Denver. He's built like that. I'm not saying he is John Franklin Myers. But if you want that kind of power end role on the roster, seeing these guys and their body types up close and in person and standing next to them, seeing what Tyreak Sapp is built like is like, yeah, that's a guy that, if you got him in a position where you put him to the formational strength and you asked him to really beat up the point of attack and make sure that we're setting hard edges, I think Sapp's fully capable of being that. I think from a prototype perspective, Dani Dennis-Sutton from Penn State, 6'5" and 3/8, 268 pounds. He's got ample length. He was another guy who had success rushing the passer and having like a very large influence with his length, but he also had quickness. He came in with 33 3/4 inch arms as well. So you want to talk about the 4.3 end. That's Dani Dennis-Sutton. Now, we don't know what direction exactly Jeff Hafley is going to end up going with what he wants to do, but don't hear edge rusher from Penn State and get gun shy because Chop Robinson came from Penn. Like, it's a different skill set, right? He's built more like an Odafe Owe from Baltimore, who got traded to the Chargers. That's a little bit more of the body type. Now, they play stylistically differently, where I think Dennis-Sutton is more of like an explosive, bendy player than what Owe is, and Owe was better coming out against the run. But if you're looking for the guy that checks the boxes of like the measurables and the length and the stature, Dennis-Sutton's that, and he had a good day. And you contrast that to like Romello Height from Texas Tech, who came in at 6'2" and 3/8, was 234 pounds, and had 32.5 inch arms. Like, that's a little bit of a tweener guy for a guy like Romello, who's been at 4 schools in 6 years and is 25 years old. And I think he's got one of the best pass rush bags in the class. He didn't get a lot of run yesterday. He didn't show up the way that I was hoping to see him. And now with the size profile at 234, you're teetering on outlier territory. At least Yannick Ngakoue was 250, right? So he was somebody I was hoping to see more of, was Romello Height. But you got Dennis-Sutton, you got TJ Parker, you've got Tyreak Sapp, you've got Gabe Jacas, Zion Young, who was 6'5", 262 and has 33.5-inch arms. Derrick Moore from Michigan. It was probably the biggest weigh-in winner for me because he's not tall. He's 6'3.5", but he's 254, which was heavier than I thought he would be. And he's got 34.25-inch arms, so he's long. And if you want to know what Derrick Moore's day was about yesterday, go Twitter search Derrick Moore, Markel Bell, and see what that rep looks like, because that was the rep of the day. That's the equivalent of the Josh Connerly rep last year against Mike Green, where Connerly was a left tackle and they put him at right tackle, and he ran right through him. It was a terrific rep. He kind of got up underneath the pads of Markel Bell, and Bell didn't quite have his feet set, so he caught him with perfect time, and then up and over he went. It was a heck of a rep. So that's the pass rush group. If you are a Dolphins team that needs pass rush help and has a bunch of picks in the top 100, some good developments yesterday is the first big takeaway that I have. But it's not the biggest takeaway that I have, because the biggest takeaway that I have is a man named Jalen Farmer. You're going to hear this name a lot on this program over the next 3 months, so let's get to know him. We'll do that next here on the show. Stick with us.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
There's nothing like being at the NBA arena, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part's not always as simple or enjoyable. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, in your hands. You can pull up the Game Time app, find an upcoming NBA game, and get tickets within minutes. And I love that you can toggle in all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees from when you put the tickets into your cart to when you go to check out. They also have panoramic seat views that allow you to see the sight lines from your seats before you buy, so there's no surprises when you get to the arena either. Everything is quick, intuitive, stress-free from start to finish, so take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. With Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not gametime.com. Let's talk about my guy, Jalen Farmer. Holy smokes, guys. This dude is built like Adonis. He's a guard from Kentucky. And new year, new me, right? Like new year, new Dolphins. Let's not care about guards this year. And I know they tried to do it last year and it didn't work out great because you put all your eggs in a basket for a guard that was going to play left guard that you traded 98 and 40 whatever to go up to 36 and get, and then asked him to play like the only non-center spot he'd never played in his college career. And then you signed James Daniels to a 3-year, $24 million contract, and he gave you 3 snaps. He watched the legacy of like former NFC North guard to sign and bust in Miami that happened with Josh Sitton. Remember Josh Sitton? And he played one game for the Dolphins in that like 8-hour marathon game with the Titans in the season opener. And then like, that was it. We never saw Josh Sitton again. He said, yeah, that's cool. Hold my beer. I'll give you 3 reps. I'll give you the first series of the season. And that's it on a 3-year, $24 million contract. I went on with Joe Rose yesterday, and he kind of went through the rundown of like, what would you do with player X and player Y? And like, would you bring them back? And like, there's an economic argument to be had that like James Daniels at less than $8 million in cash with what he's capable of being might be worth it, but he's played 3 snaps since October 1st of 2024. Like, you're in the process of trimming salary. And I if you're going to build it right, like moving on from these kind of guys that even if James Daniels worked out for you in 2026, what's the payoff beyond that? As a guy that's then pushing into 30, who's missed almost all of he's missed all but 5 games. And one of those 5 games was 3 plays in the last 2 years combined. Right. So like I consider that spot to be a wide open spot. I wouldn't put any eggs, or I wouldn't put a lot of eggs in the Austin Jackson bucket either. But Austin at least gives you half the season every year, right? So if you're getting sufficient starter play at right tackle with Austin for 11, and if you were only going to move on from 1, I would rather keep Austin at 11.5 than keep James Daniels at 8.78 or whatever, or 7.87 or whatever the exact number is. So I kind of consider the right side of the offensive line a blank slate. I know you can't really count and not give competition to Jonah Savaitanai as well. So you've got 3 spots on that offensive line that are unsettled when it's all said and done. Farmer is a former Florida Gator who redshirted his true freshman season there, played in 2 games his true freshman season, was in Florida for 1 more year, and then transferred to Kentucky and has been a 2-year starter for the Kentucky Wildcats at right guard. And this guy is a monster. Not on my radar at all coming into the week. I had not gotten that deep into the pecking order. And it's funny because, like, I did the film last night. I did his college film after watching him at practice yesterday. And he had some of the heaviest hands and the heaviest anchor of anybody that I watched yesterday on the offensive line. Like, he was not moved. And then you turn on the tape and I watched 4 games from last year. It was Georgia, Florida, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. I watched 4 games. And he was consistently anchoring at the line of scrimmage at first contact. Guy taking short sets. He's got some linear movement skills. He's not like the juiciest guy. Like, he doesn't have like explosive range. I think he's got sufficient range. That was how I graded it when I graded that trait, right? But Jalen Farmer, very difficult to move off the line of scrimmage. And if he's in the run game and he's playing forward and he's taking double teams and deuce blocks and tray blocks or if he's pulling and kicking the end man on the line of scrimmage, he will smoke you. Like, he's got the hammer and he drops it on defensive players. It is really fun to watch. And when you listen to Jon-Eric Sullivan talking about building the team inside out, you listen to Jeff Hafley talk about, I want to be a team that runs the ball. And when the other opposing team knows that we're going to run the ball, we're still going to run the ball. You know what Kentucky had to do a lot last year? Run the ball. And they still had success. And when they got into the short yardage situations and they got down in the low red zone and it was 4th and 1, you know what they did? They ran behind Jalen Farmer. And they got a lot of them. So that moves the needle for me. The gotta-have-it situations, the obvious running situations. He's built like John Simpson, who was with the Ravens and then signed in free agency with the Jets for a handsome dollar amount in free agency. And he's got some Rob Hunt sprinkled in there too. So like, Simpson's a sufficient level starter. Rob Hunt's a Pro Bowl guard. And like, that used to be a thing where I just get called a homer because I'm like, man, Rob Hunt's like a Pro Bowl caliber player here in Miami. And it's like, no, he's not. The offensive line stinks. And then he goes to Carolina. You know what happened? He made the Pro Bowl the first year. He's got that kind of profile to him as a blocker, the point of attack stuff, the displacement ability, the movement skills. It's a really exciting player. And like, if you could tell me right now, and if they drafted Jalen Farmer at 43, I am all in, right? Like, they drafted Robert Hunt at 37 or 39 back in 2020. Like, he profiles as that kind of draft range player for me. And there's going to be other options on the offensive line. I think I'm through final film grades. I put them on the, what is it? The Sun lane, the with the Peach Pass in Georgia or whatever it is, like the express lane on the highway, right? Like I put the Jalen Farmer tape and film assessment on the fast lane on the highway with the easy pass. And I said, we're going to get this one done now. And he delivered. I'm through about a dozen final film grades on offensive linemen. He's my 4th graded offensive lineman in the class. So if you're watching the Senior Bowl practices today, when you get to the national team and they're doing O-line, D-line 101s, check out the cat in the blue helmet that's built like a T-800, okay? Because that's the guy that I want. And I want a little bit of that demeanor. I want a little bit of that nasty. I want a little bit of that that teeth that he plays with. I want some of that on the Dolphins offensive line. Really exciting player for me. So that's my soapbox Jalen Farmer segment on today's show. Some other thoughts, including some guys that are probably disqualifiers with some disappointing size profiles. We'll get into that next here on the show. Make sure you guys stick with us. It's the last call for football this year. One FanDuel, one final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get in on the action board for the NFL season officially comes to a close. It is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of all the action with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing a favorite, riding an underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for all season long. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right. Overly positive for Kyle's peddling hopium again on the show, right? Let me be a Debbie Downer for a few minutes. As there were some size profiles that came in measurements at the Dolphins' biggest position of need that I would consider to be unsettling. And I'm talking, of course, about quarterbacks, where Garrett Nussmeier, who kind of came in, and I felt Garrett Nussmeier had the highest floor. I think you can watch the way that he operates at the line of scrimmage. I think you can see kind of the control of the offense. He's the son of a current NFL offensive coordinator, and it shows. Like he looks like it, and he's tough in the pocket, and he's got good anticipation, and he can throw layered balls over the middle of the field. There's a lot to like with Garrett Nussmeier. But he's 6'1", 202 pounds, somehow came in smaller than the 205 he was on the roster at this year at LSU, with 8 6/8 hand sizes. Like 202 is like first percentile for quarterbacks to come through the combine since 1999. You're talking outlier. And that to me, like, you're now in non-starter territory to be talked about in the top 100. And that's just the probabilities of it. Because when you make a habit as a team of drafting and targeting and acquiring talent that is all exceptions to the rule, more often than not, the rule's the rule for a reason, right? And Garrett Nussmeier, I love the way he plays. I think he's tough as hell. But you can be tough as hell and not be built to play that way in the NFL. And at 6'1", 202, with small hands, there's compounding variables here that I think it's going to push him into day 3, and convincingly on day 3. And if you're looking for a quarterback that is going to give you some ceiling, I don't know what the ceiling is here now, because you'd have to drastically remodel your build and add like 15 pounds of muscle to kind of bulk up. But you don't really have the frame for it at 6'1", and you're already not an athletic guy. As far as like, you don't really use your legs and win with your legs. So it's this weird limbo of in between for Garrett Nussmeier that, like, I was hoping he was going to come in and be like 215. Like, the hand size is the hand size. Like, it wouldn't be the first time in NFL history guys had small hand size. But 202 with not a particularly athletic profile, at least some of the other guys that are in that stratosphere, like the Kyler Murrays and the Bryce Youngs and the Russell, at least they can use their legs, right? Like, Garrett doesn't really play that way. So that was one of the big disappointments for me with the weigh-ins. If you are looking for the traitsy guy, Taylen Green came in at 6'6", 230 with 10-inch hands, and maybe the longest arms on his team's roster. Oh, that's not true. He has Markel Bell on his roster. The 35-inch arms for a quarterback. And it's funny to see that number because when you watch like his throwing delivery, like you see 35-inch arms because he's got like this over-the-top grip on the ball, and he's got to load and come out and up and then slingshot the ball out. I thought he threw with good juice. I think the accuracy is a question, but there's no questioning the athleticism. There's no questioning the size. Right. So if you're looking, you get into the kind of the day three conversational guys that you're interested in kicking the tires on. Taylen Green came through and proved his size profile to be what you were hopeful that maybe it was. Probably pretty safe to put the Diego Pavia stuff to bed. 5'9" and 7/8, 198. Smaller than Garrett. Right. And I don't think he has that precision element or that control at the line of scrimmage that Pavia. He's just a tough as heck dude that plays college football quarterback at a really fun style of play. But I don't think there's any sustainability there to project him to the NFL either. So obviously the quarterbacks, I'm watching skill players today. I will still be stealing looks at the trenches, but I will have eyes more open to the outside today at practice. So those are my takeaways from the first day of Senior Bowl practices. Hope you guys enjoyed hearing what I had to say. And I will be back at the stadium today. Practice is starting the next couple hours. Looking forward to getting it rolling. And I will be back shortly thereafter to give you guys my impressions from the second day of Senior Bowl practice. Down here in Mobile, Alabama, Kyle Krabs. Keep it locked in here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you all again soon. Fins up.